Hey y'all, my name is Babbles, and welcome back to something a little different. You see, I've been working on a series I call Building Tales, where I've been teaching myself how to build better in Minecraft using stories. And I started this series all the way back in March 2024, this year. So, what I wanted to do was take a look back at those first builds I made, where I was taking inspiration from Cinderella, because I feel like I've maybe learned a lot since then. So, enjoy this unedited look at my first builds in this series. Hey y'all, my name is Babbles and I have a goal. I want to get better at building in Minecraft. So to do that, I'm going to delve into some stories. Welcome to Building Tales. So what is the goal of this series? Well, like I said earlier, I want to teach myself how to build better. Because I'd noticed that in my regular Minecraft playing, all I was doing was building the same kinds of things over and over again, and not really being adventurous in the things that I was doing. I want to get better at just about every aspect of building. I want to get better at structures. I want to get better at organics. I even want to get better at terraforming. But that's not going to happen if I just do the same things over and over again. So I decided I needed a better structure and more inspiration. And then I thought about stories. Just about every culture in every place in every time period has its own set of stories, and I could use those as inspiration for the things that I want to build. So in this series, I will be looking at different stories and building different things from within those stories. Sometimes it may be a building, like a castle. Sometimes it may be something as small as a house. Sometimes it may be something from the environment, or even a creature or character from those stories. The point is to get me some variety in my building and really expand my skills. Depending on the story and what I want to build, I may spend one video per story or I may spend several. I don't know. I just kind of want to go with where the story takes me and where the inspiration takes me. I also kind of want to look at the different versions of stories because there are lots of cultures that share the same basic story, but there are little differences that can really impact how it comes out. And I want to kind of pay homage to those different versions by building in those different styles. In the interest of full disclosure, this will be a creative mode series, and the builds that I make will be a mixture of pre-planned and improvised. Some of them I may have worked out a little bit before I started recording. Others of them I may be working on as I'm recording. The goal of this series is to learn how to build better, so I'm going to use all the resources available to do that. Now that I've got a space cleared out, it's time to start building. So the first story we're going to be looking at is actually Cinderella. It seemed like a pretty good place to start. It's a pretty familiar fairy tale. And one of the most famous tellings of it is by the Grimm brothers. In this version, Cinderella loses her mother, and her father remarries so she gains a stepmother and two stepsisters. Growing up, Cinderella's stepmother and stepsisters are very cruel to her, making her do all of the chores and even making her sleep by the fireplace, earning her the name Cinderella. Now one day, a ball is announced by the king to find a wife for his son the prince. Invitations are sent out for every eligible young lady to come and attend. Now obviously Cinderella's stepsisters are going to come, but when Cinderella asks her stepmother if she could go, she's instead assigned more chores. Cinderella's stepmother tells her she can go if she can complete these chores, but every time Cinderella does this, she's assigned another chore. And these chores are seemingly impossible. Cinderella can only get them done with the help of some woodland friends. Eventually, her stepmother tells her that she simply can't go to the ball as she has no fine clothes to wear, and so her stepmother and stepsisters go on without her. But Cinderella makes it to the ball anyway. She is gifted a beautiful dress from a bird in a tree and heads to the ball, where she dances with the prince. But at the end of the night, when she has to return home, the prince follows her, but he can never find her. This happens 3 nights in a row. On the third night, Cinderella accidentally leaves a shoe behind, and the prince uses that to scour the land in search for the one woman he knows will fit this shoe. When he gets to Cinderella's house, her stepsisters try to trick him by making their feet fit the shoe in rather gruesome ways. But he finally finds Cinderella, and her foot fits the shoe perfectly, and they get married and live happily ever after. This is the version I believe most people are familiar with, but that's not actually what we're building from today. The version we're building from is much older, and it comes from France. It's from a story called Le Fresne, if you'll pardon my pronunciation. In this version, Cinderella is actually left as a baby in the roots of an ash tree. So we're building a tree. It seemed kind of appropriate to start the series with what Cinderella would have started her life in. So I've built the basic framework of the tree. It's made mostly of oak logs with some spruce stairs, spruce slabs, and then also spruce fence posts and gates in it. And I started with the trunk, and I wanted it to have a little bit of texture with the stairs and the slabs in there. And then I did the roots, and I wanted them to kind of pop out of the ground, go back into the ground, just kind of go everywhere like I thought real tree roots would. And then I built the branches, and I wanted them to not be so uniform. I wanted to have them kind of going off in different directions, and again, that's mainly the oak logs. But I also added the fence posts and gates and the slabs and stairs anywhere that I thought it might look a little thin, just to thicken it out a little bit and make it look a little bit more sturdy. But yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with it. Now that I've got the trunk built out, I'm putting in the leaves. And I'm using a mixture of oak leaves, acacia leaves, and azalea leaves. The reason I'm using these types is because oak leaves and acacia leaves actually have a very similar color, but their textures are different, so it can provide a little bit of variety when you're looking at it. When I started building this tree, I knew I wanted it to be tall and fluffy, so the way I went about doing that was I focused on the ends of the branches first, and I really put a lot of oak leaves around them to get kind of a general shape. Once I had that general shape, I knew I would be able to go in later and really fill in the middle bits. Other than that, I didn't really have a method for where I was placing the leaves. Like I said, I wanted it to be fluffy, and that grants a sort of freedom in where the leaves can be placed. If I wanted it to be a more manicured tree, I would maybe have to be a little more intentional, but I wanted this to be a wild tree, something that you could just find out in the forest, something that would be growing freely. So like I said earlier, this series is going to be a combination of pre-planned and improvised builds. Well, this one was completely improvised. I have built a couple of trees before. I will not say that I am an expert by any means, but I did feel comfortable enough with my skills that I would be able to just kind of freehand this. That being said, I do think there is room for improvement with this, and that is another one of my goals for this series. I want to be able to look back on this first video a long time from now and see where I started. I think it would be a really cool thing to see my progress over time. So after I did those main bits of oak leaves, I went back in with the acacia leaves and started filling in some sparse patches. Like I said earlier, the color is very similar, but the texture is different enough to provide some interest. And I'm once again freehanding where these leaves are going. What I'm doing is I'm looking for sparse patches that I've left and filling them in with this different texture. I know I want the majority of the leaves to be this color, which is why I'm using these two, and I'll go in with the azalea later to kind of lighten things up a bit. So what I'm doing now is I'm going in with the azalea leaves, which are a lighter color than the oak and acacia leaves, and I'm kind of focusing them on the high parts of the tree, or darker parts that I think could be lit up a little more. The way I'm approaching this is the same way I would approach something that I was drawing. I have to take into account where I think the light is coming from, and I'm focusing the azalea leaves on those places. Or, like I said earlier, there are some shadowy parts that I think should be brought out a little bit more, so I'm placing the lighter leaves there, because it'll draw the eye. Now what I'm doing is I'm going in with a combination of all three leaves and really focusing on the shape. I really want to fluff it out a little bit and make it look more alive. Since this is based on a fairy tale, I also wanted to bring in a little bit of magic, and my first thought with that was glowberries and some glow lichen to kind of give it a shine and that little fantastical element. In the Fresna, Cinderella is left in the roots of the ash tree. So to reference that, I put a little bassinet or crib down amongst the roots that I had made earlier. And there we have it. Here is our completed tree. I really do hope you've enjoyed this video, so leave a like if you like, subscribe if you so choose, and please comment down below what stories you'd like me to explore in the future. And I always recommend checking out your local library for any more information on these stories. Have a good day! Hey y'all, my name is Babbles, and welcome back to Building Tales. This is the series where I teach myself how to build better in Minecraft using stories. Last episode, I built this tree, based on the French Cinderella story Le Fresne, and this episode, I'm going to be going back to Cinderella, but a slightly different version. Today I'm going to be building Cinderella's house, and to do that, I'm taking inspiration from the oldest known version of the Cinderella story, in which she is a young woman who comes from ancient Thrace. Now, I couldn't actually find a whole lot of information about how houses would be built in ancient Thrace, but I was able to find that they were heavily influenced by their neighbors Greece and Persia, so I'm keeping that in mind as I'm building today. So right now I have a box, a very undetailed box. But in my research, I found that houses in Thrace likely would have been made of mud. And so I have the mud bricks on the corners to add a little bit of structure. And I thought about making the main walls packed mud, but as you can see, it's a little more textured than the brown mushroom I've got now. And having entire walls made out of that packed mud, I think it would have been a little bit too overwhelming to look at. So I'm probably still going to use the packed mud to detail later on and add some more texture, but right now I'm really kind of just liking the look of the mushroom blocks. So now I'm going to go in and add some details like windows, and I'm going to put a roof on it. So in the previous video, I talked about how some of these builds would be completely improvised and some of them would be pre-planned. This one is one of the pre-planned ones, so I am using Lightmatica as a guide, but I did build this previously. And like I said, I'm using it as a guide, but I'm also improvising off of it. So I've added this roof, and I just added it using brick slabs and brick blocks, and I put these open fence gates in between. And then I added these windows and doors, and I outlined those using the mud brick stairs, slabs, and walls just to give it a little bit more structure and make it seem like there's something holding it up. And there's not really an interior yet, but I have designated a couple of floors. And then over here I have this balcony, which I imagine could be used for parties or get-togethers. And I imagine this area under here could also be used for that, and I've got some plans for this area. So yeah, here's what I have so far. So as you can see, I have a bit of an interior now. So I have this area up here, which is just meant to be like a little sitting area, and I put these lanterns on top of the mud brick walls as kind of sconces, just to provide a little more light. Down here, we've got bookshelves, we've got windows with more sconces. We have another little sitting area, just lots of areas to entertain other people. And I put these kind of structural supports across the ceiling to provide a little more lighting. And in here we have a bedroom with more bookshelves, some storage, a couple of paintings, and then out through here we have a work area. So we have some textile stuff over here, some smithing stuff over here, a little bit of a kitchen, some storage. I would imagine they would keep drinks or other food items in here. We have a fireplace. We have more storage over here. And then here is where Cinderella would sleep. This is where she got the name Cinderella, from being next to the fireplace. So yeah, I'm going to work on some outdoors details now. So there we have it. Here is Cinderella's completed house based on what I imagine a house from ancient Thrace would look like. We have some flower boxes up here, a few decorative pots, some bushes. Then over here I built a stable because I imagine they would have horses. Seeing as her father was a merchant, he would need to be able to get around somehow. And then back here we have some vineyards, or a small version of a vineyard using the glowberries. And then here we have some cypress-inspired trees. And of course, I showed this earlier, but we have a completed interior with a sitting room, another sitting room up there, and then downstairs is the bedroom. And then up here, we have the balcony, and then downstairs is a little area where I imagine more parties could happen. And then here we have the work area with Cinderella's sleeping area. And that's the completed build. I do hope you've enjoyed this video. Please leave a like if you like, subscribe if you so choose, and don't forget to check out a book at your local library. See y'all! Hey y'all, my name is Babbles, and welcome back to Building Tales, the series where I teach myself how to build using stories. This week, I'm still building in Cinderella, but I'm taking inspiration from the Vietnamese version of the tale, Tum and Cam, although please pardon my pronunciation. In the last 2 episodes, I built a tree and a house inspired by 2 other versions of Cinderella, but in this episode, I'm going to be building a palace, and it's going to be inspired by some ancient Vietnamese architecture, but I am going to include a few fantastical elements in it, stuff that maybe isn't so realistic, and I'm going to put it right here. So let's get started. So I've flattened out the terrain here, and I've built these two buildings. These are going to be the wings of the palace, and there's going to be a larger building in between them. But I wanted this build to feel very symmetrical, so I made the wings identical. And roofs are actually kind of one of the things I struggle with the most in Minecraft, so I wanted them to have a little bit of a shape. And so I made these corners just using some upside down stairs and slabs. And then I wanted there to be a little bit of movement along the edge. So I just added that in with more slabs. So yeah, I'm going to get started on the central part. So I have now built the central building for the palace. This will be the main section of it. And the process of building each of these 4 floors was basically the same as the one before it. I just have the terracotta and then the sandstone with some bamboo outlines and mangrove pillars like I had on the wings. And I also brought in that kind of wavy roofline from the wings just to make the whole building feel more cohesive. But as you can see on the upper levels, I went a little bit more extreme with the corners. I wanted it to have a lot of movement. So now I'm going to work on some outside details. Okay, so outside details are done. I have this little opening so that you can get through the building, and I've got it on the other side as well. I wanted to do these decorative windows because I saw a lot of those when I was looking up Vietnamese palaces and temples, and they just looked really cool. And I wasn't quite sure how to replicate that, but I think I've done my best, and I am very satisfied with how it came out. I put the birch trapdoors behind it just so that it would have a little bit of contrast and could stand out better. And to kind of reference Cinderella, which is heavily associated with midnight, I wanted it to kind of have these moon shapes. So it's kind of like two crescent moons and then a full moon in the middle. And then I've got more windows up on the other levels. And then I've got these balconies out here, which aren't fully decorated yet, but I'm thinking this one can kind of be just a little hangout spot. And then the one on this side, I want it to kind of be like a terrace garden. So I want to have a lot of plants on here eventually. And on the sides here, I wanted to have these walkways. I think they'd probably be called breezeways between the main palace building and the wings so that you could get through easily but have a little bit of fresh air. And yeah, I'm really liking how it's turning out so far. So we have a storage room, and a kitchen, and a ballroom. So the build is finished. Here is the palace with the 2 wings. And here we've got a balcony. And we have that little terrace garden I was talking about. And now here's the thing. This is pretty big. But it's not really the size of a full palace. And that's kind of on purpose. Palaces can be absolutely massive. And I really wanted to focus in on the parts that would be used in the Cinderella story, like the ballroom and the places of the palace that would provide the things that would go into a ball, like food and decorations and things. So I just did a slice of the palace. That being said, this is only part 1. I'm going to be expanding on this build in the next episode, and as you can see, the terrain around here is a little bit messy, so I'm going to be working on that. Now, one thing that I'm very proud of in this building is the interiors, because I'm not very good at interiors, but I think this looks pretty nice. That being said, I do know that it's lacking. And if the whole point of this series is to teach myself how to build and do these things, this is a great starting point. This is a great thing to look back at and say, look how far I've come. So yeah, it may not be perfect, but it's definitely the best thing I've done so far. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you like, subscribe if you so choose. Let me know in the comments what story you would like me to take a look at next, and don't forget to check out a book from your local library. See y'all! Hey y'all, my name is Babbles, and welcome back to Building Tales, the series where I teach myself how to build better using stories. In the last video, I built this palace inspired by the Vietnamese version of Cinderella, Tam and Kam. And once again, please pardon my pronunciation. And in this video, I'm going to finish it up, add some extra details, and do some terraforming. So let's get started. So, something that a palace might want to have to defend itself is a wall. So, I have built one here. The main wall is just made out of deep slate bricks with the warped wood for the roof. And then I have these four gatehouses on each of the sides of the walls. And on the ones in the front and the back, the two main ones, I have these little doors that could, or gates that could come down and block off the palace to keep them safe. And I have these counterweights that I have so that they can roll back and roll forward. And then I've got the two doors on the ends. And inside of here is what the inside of the wall looks like, just so I could imagine soldiers or people coming through. They could maybe shoot arrows through the windows. And I wanted to have the end rods as the lights because I wanted to bring in a little bit of fantasy or magic, and I really love the particles coming off of them. So, yeah, I'm going to get started on some courtyard details now. So the courtyard is finished. We can start over here where I've built a little pond with a bench and a little swing underneath a cherry tree. I went with the dark oak wood because I wanted it to be a bit more neutral. I love the look of cherry wood, but the bark is just a little bit too purple for what I wanted, so I went with the more neutral dark oak. I put up some street lamps. I made this little path that goes around the entire courtyard. I also added some coral over in front of this main building as kind of flower beds. I really like the way they look and how colorful they are. And if we follow the path over here, I've got some stables over here, just some simple ones where you could keep about 3 horses. And then this building here is where I wanted to have a blacksmith. So we've got the smithing tables, the cauldrons, some furnaces, some grindstones, and of course the anvils. I just wanted to do something really simple. And then over here, we have kind of a storehouse for like the agricultural products. I've got some melons and pumpkins and some mushrooms growing in here. And then down this side, we've got some crops. I've got carrots and potatoes, melons and pumpkins, and some beets and some wheat just to add some color. And because a palace surrounded by a wall like this is going to need something to sustain it. And I just hydrated those using some waterlogged stairs. So yeah, I'm gonna do some final terraforming details and then this build will be complete. And there we have it. This is the 100% completed palace from the Vietnamese Cinderella story, Tum and Come. Now, for the terraforming, I just did some light texturing and I planted some trees, and I think it looks pretty good. I am a total beginner at terraforming, but I think this is a pretty good start. And we have the walls with the gatehouses, the stables, and the buildings back there. We have the pond and the crops and the paths with the lampposts, and I'm really proud of what I've done here. This is easily the most detailed thing I've ever built in Minecraft, and I really like how it turned out. So that's all for this episode, and that is all for the Cinderella series. But don't worry, Building Tales will continue. I'll just be looking at a different story. So for now, like if you like, subscribe if you so choose, and comment down below what stories you'd like me to take a look at in the future. See y'all! So that's Cinderella. I can definitely tell that a lot has changed. I definitely know much more about audio and much more about editing in general, and even a lot more about Minecraft. So I do hope you've enjoyed this little look back, and as I always say, thank you for watching. Leave a like if you like, subscribe if you so choose, comment down below what stories you would like me to take a look at in the future, and don't forget to check out a book from your local library. See y'all!